Spies. Saboteurs. Assassins. We've all done terrible things on behalf of the rebellion.
Cassian Andor. Don't matter what you tell me or tell yourself. You'll ultimately die fighting these bastards. Wouldn't you rather give it all at once to something real?
We've chosen a side. We're fighting against the dark.
There is an organized rebel effort. Drill down and get a hunt started.
You realize what you set in motion? People will suffer.
Time has come to force their hand.
At what cost?
Everything!
Every day we wait, they get stronger.
Let's take them by surprise.
For the greater good. Call it what you will.
Let's call it war.
People are standing up. They're afraid. Right now, they're afraid.
Star Wars Andor, 3-episode premiere, streaming September 21st.
Okay. Welcome everybody to Straight Outta Gotham Tonight, SOG Tonight, and of course, this show will be dealing with the trailer we just saw. Of course, I'm talking about Andor, which premiered on Disney Plus yesterday with the first 3 episodes, and it was quite an interesting first 3 episodes. I'll put it that way for now. But I wanted to show the trailer first because we got a little bit what you see in the trailer is actually from the first 3 episodes, and then some of it obviously is from future episodes that we haven't seen yet. But I just kind of wanted to set the tone and put that out there for everybody to digest, to really get what I'm going for here with this show going forward. So this is going to be a weekly show. Obviously there's 12 episodes, but this one it'll probably just be 9 weeks because they released the first 3 yesterday, so there's 9 episodes left. So this show will be dealing with Andor obviously on the weekly basis every Thursday night, and I will have a revolving door of guests. I know last time when I did Obi-Wan Kenobi, Nico Caruso from the Vigilante 1939 was my co-host, and he's actually a little bit busy with life right now, so I'm doing this, and I'm going to bring a bunch of different faces. Some people you might know, some people you might not know. And one person I'm sure you don't know, at least from on air, you might know him from interacting with him in certain venues, whether it's either on the Batman on Film page or on the Straight Outta Gotham page, is going to be my guest host tonight. And I'm talking about Mr. Steve Helm. So let me bring him on. Steve.
What's going on, brother?
Yes. So thank you, man, for agreeing to come on and do this. We had been talking about doing, getting you on a podcast a few times. Pete and I have talked about it, but we haven't been able to make that work. So I was just like, hey, do you want to come on and do this? And you were very gracious enough to lend your talents to come on air and talk about Andor with me.
Yeah, you caught me after I had a couple of drinks. That's cool.
So as you see on the ticker, as you know, Andor will come out every Wednesday on Disney Plus. If you're watching this episode, you obviously already know that, but in case nobody knows or we have new people coming on to look and you want to check out Andor, that's when it'll be streaming every Wednesday. So Steve, give a little bit of background of your Star Wars fandom. I see you're wearing a Star Wars shirt. Give a little bit of background of
I'm just a fashion guru for Star Wars pretty much, man. No, I think with everybody, we're kids, I think probably the first movie I saw in the theater was Return of the Jedi, so I actually went backwards from there, then had to go see the other ones after that. But yeah, man. And then of course we had that big gap until, we got the Phantom Menace. But yeah, so you grew up a Star Wars fan, at least if you're the early 80s, late 70s,
Yes.
I mean, that was, you walked, remember the Chewbacca thing that you could put your figures on? Yeah, had one of those. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I had that. I had so many Star Wars toys growing up. I had the first Death Star, the Kenner Death Star that had that that the garbage disposal with like all that foam in it.
And now you're just bragging. You're just bragging.
Yeah, I had like it's crazy. I don't think about these things until I start talking to people about it. They're like, "Oh crap, yeah, I had that."
Yeah,
I never
yeah.
got the Millennium Falcon though. That's the one thing I never was fortunate enough.
Yeah, I
So,
think I just had a couple of figures, man. I was having to make my own stuff.
nah, seriously, like my older sister is the reason why I actually am into Star Wars like I am. She was very much into Star Wars and even the superhero stuff because she liked Superman. So that's
Right.
how I got into all of this world. And I'm so happy I didn't. If you would have told me when I was a kid that when I was 45 years old, I'd be talking about new Star Wars content, I would have slapped you and said, "Shut up, you're lying."
Yeah.
but here we are, right? Like here we are.
No, it's great.
Yep, it's been a fantastic couple years. A lot of the Disney stuff has been it's been hit or miss. You know, I think for most fans.
Yeah.
The shows I would say have done better than the films. If you want to, at least for fan review, I would say that like the Mandalorian's was a huge hit.
Yeah, Mandalorian's great. Boba Fett was, when they got the Mandalorian in there, was great.
Exactly. That's the consensus, I think.
Yeah. Obi-Wan was awesome. And then as far as like the new Skywalker trilogy, it was,
like I said, it's hit or miss. Some people loved it. Some people didn't like it. And that's fine. I have no problem. It would be crazy if everyone loved everything because that's just not real life. So I have issues with some of it. I like it overall, but yes, I have some issues with some of those films. So, but
overall,
one film I do not have an issue with is Rogue One. And that this character, that was the first time we met Cassian Andor, which this show obviously is based on, was in Rogue One. So if everyone out there is watching, you all know this is obviously a prequel to that because we all know he dies at the end of Rogue One. Spoiler, right? Like spoiler. And yes, we will be doing spoilers during this show, guys. So if you haven't seen Andor yet and you don't want to be spoiled, don't watch the show because we're going to be talking about it pretty openly about what happened on the first 3 episodes. So yeah, so we met Cassian Andor in Rogue One, and we kind of didn't know. He mentions things in that, like the one line I remember he says is, "I've been fighting since I'm 6 years old." Right? That's what he tells Jin when they're talking on the I forget the name of the ship, but they're talking, and he says that like, "You have no idea what I've been through. I've been fighting since I'm 6 years old," and this is kind of that. We're getting to see that now, right?
Right.
So, just really quickly, obviously, I said they showed the first 3. Steve, what were your first impressions of Andor without going into the actual discussion?
Yeah, no, overall, I watched I watched them back to back to back. First episode was okay. It's slow building, definitely through the first 2 episodes. The third episode, okay, you get going and you see kind of where we're going. So, like I said, it was slow. It was good. It was a lot of new stuff. It's Star Wars, but it doesn't have all the familiarity of the Star Wars that you already know.
Right. That's kind of been the consensus of people watching it.
It's very adult. It's adult Star Wars, too.
Right. It's definitely a more grounded, more gritty show. Yeah. It's similar. Even the Mandalorian's probably a little bit more fantastic,
right? Yeah.
Than this. It's definitely, but it's definitely a more grounded show. A show that's more very, very bare bones. It takes you into a place that we're not familiar with. In this universe, which is one of the things I've been dying for them to do in Star Wars for such a long time, is build out this great world that we have. Like, yes, I love the Skywalker stuff. It's what I grew up on. It's what I know. It's where I'm comfortable. But, the expanded universe growing up with the books and everything, they did a really good job of building out the world. And then all of that was kind of tossed aside when Disney took over, and none of that counts anymore.
Yeah.
So now we're getting an opportunity for them to actually dive in here and build out this world. And that's really what I loved about watching the first 3 episodes of Andor. That was my first impression, as how different it was, but still how much I enjoyed it.
Right.
Like you said, it is a slow build. It's something that you have to kind of stick with for a little bit
Mhm.
because I mean it comes out the gate strong. Like that first scene is very suspenseful and intense.
Yeah.
The first couple scenes, but then it kind of gets into that character building stage.
Yeah, that's why I think it was a good idea to come out with 3 episodes at one time. Because if it had just been that first episode and then you had to wait a week, I think some people would have been let down by it.
Yeah, I agree. I think I think Obi-Wan just showed the first was it the first one the first
I
two.
think they did the first 2. Yeah,
Yeah, they did the first two. And even that was kind of met with a lot of like, well, you know, it's
yeah,
kind of
but it was
boring.
Obi-Wan. I
Right.
mean, this guy, you just seen him in one movie,
Right.
and so you don't really have that connection to this guy.
Right.
Plus, he's
You're
dead
right.
already.
Yeah, we hardly got a chance to know him anyway.
Yeah.
He's dead already. But from what they establish, he has an interesting past, right?
Sure. Oh yeah.
We're gonna get into that in a little bit, but I wanted to first focus on like I started talking about this how they expanded the Star Wars universe. I wanted to really first focus on the planets. There's a lot of planets that they introduce in this show. Some you might know if you have some of the legend stuff, the expanded universe stuff. Some of these planets have been around before, but the first one we kind of are introduced. There's Morlano 1 and then Preox Morlano, right?
Mhm.
So those two I know for a fact were created for the show.
Okay.
So I did a little bit of my own research to kind of figure out what was made created for the show, and those two were one of them is kind of it's like a workers guild type place, right? The Morlano 1 is kind of like this place, very blue collar, and that's what you meet in the first scene. You meet Andor. Cassian Andor actually goes to a brothel, right?
Yeah.
He goes to a brothel, right? The very
Yeah.
first scene we see him.
That's how you know it's a different Star Wars.
Exactly, right? It's an adult version
Yeah.
of Star Wars. So he goes to this brothel, and then these two guys he gets into it with these two guys, and then he's looking for somebody, right? He's looking for his sister. He tells one of, I guess, the madam. I don't know what she was.
Bordello blood. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. She was the madam or someone, whatever in charge of the brothel, or like she was one of the. She might have just been one of the working girls. I have no idea, but they don't spend much time explaining what her role is. They just kind of throw her in there to talk to him. Turns out she can't help him, but he gets into it with those two other guys, and of course, just like Rogue One, this is what I said. This is why it reminded me exactly of Rogue One. In the beginning of Rogue One, Andor kills that guy when he's trying to escape because he would have slowed him down. And what happens in this one?
Yeah. He's
Right?
He's trying to get away from these guys. They come up on him. They stop him. He ends up. I don't even know how he killed the first guy. It was an accident.
Yeah, he just kind of hit him with his head.
Yeah, like he did the
fell.
Bruce Willis thing, headbutted him in the nose. I guess I don't know. And then the next guy's like, "Hey man, just whatever. It was an accident. Let me go." And no.
Yeah, like he kind of made the same decision. Like, if I let this guy live,
Yeah,
it's gonna come back to haunt me in the end. Because
Right.
like he's obviously asking for information that's protected, or for whatever reason, people don't want to tell him.
yeah, he definitely doesn't have any problem cutting strings loose, man.
No, not at all. So that was the first, that was again the first time we see this character. He's killing people.
Yeah,
Like very first time. So that was how you're introduced to this. And then we get transferred to Preox Morlano, which is kind of it's like a planet of, so it's like a security guard. Like, I don't know what they were. Cops.
yeah. I was trying to who are these guys? Like, are they like kind of like little private unit like the Empire hires to work on these planets? I didn't know. I was trying to figure out exactly what they were.
Yeah, that part was a little confusing. But clearly there's some kind of law enforcement adjacent group.
Sure.
And immediately those two guys who were on Morlano 1 worked for them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how this whole thing begins and how we get into our first action on the show. But those are the first two planets we're introduced to. Then we're introduced to Thest, which is a planet that has existed in Star Wars before. It's been in a video game, I believe. So that's technically the home planet of Cassian Andor, and well, the other characters we're going to meet, which we'll talk about in a little while. We're brought up. Kanari is another planet we're introduced to, which is the planet he's actually from when he was a little boy, and that's kind of like a mining planet. It looked like this one scene you see the kid when he's a kid, he walks and there's this huge empty space. It looks like it was a mining planet of some sort. So they're kind of like I said, they're expanding the world. They're giving us different things, which is something that they've done in the Disney universe overall. Even in like the sequel trilogy, like we met Octo, and we met, we were taking the planets that like what's the one? God, what's the one Ray's from? I'm forgetting. Jesus.
Ray?
Yeah. Not Jeddah. Jeddah is the planet that Saw Gerrera is on, which we're probably going to see again.
Yeah, for sure.
In this show. Jakku. That's
Jakku. Yeah.
Right. So that's like Ray's planet. So we've been introduced to these other planets in the Disney era of Star Wars, but these are some new planets that we're getting thrown into. So since we've been following Star Wars for a while, do you think that's going to be confusing for people?
No. I mean, you've got all kinds of different Star Wars fans. Like you apparently have read a lot of books, and a lot of people don't read books, so they got no idea. But no, I think it's not. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. Of course, when they hear something they recognize, they can be like, "Oh yeah," that kind of reaction. But I don't think it'll be a big deal.
Yeah, I just because everything seems so hypersensitive now, and everyone's kind of like, when anytime.
Well, we are Star Wars fans, so
exactly right. So I love this stuff. Like I love the world building and how they're expanding stuff, because that's what I've wanted them to do for years. But there's gonna be I'm sure there's gonna be some traditional fans who are like, why are they doing this? Why are we doing stuff that I don't care about? So we'll see how this goes going forward. But I think it's important for us first, before we really get into discussing the show, is to discuss the key characters we meet in this show. Discuss the main characters. Obviously, Cassian Andor is the main character. He's the main protagonist of the show. It's about him. It's about his life.
Yeah.
And like we talked about, we got introduced to him in Rogue One. Definitely a courageous guy. And we're kind of getting more of his backstory here on how he got to be that character that we met in Rogue One. So that's kind of where we are with him. We're introduced to a friend, or maybe she was a old love interest.
There was definitely something at some point going on there.
Right? Some kind of tension between those two.
Yeah, but like I said, he cut some strings like it ain't no thing.
It's true, man. And I mean, she'd be a tough one for me to leave. I'll say she's a beautiful girl. Bix, her name is Bix Colleen. So she's one of his oldest friends, and she seems to have connections to the early stages of the rebellion, right? Like that's how he meets the person we'll talk about soon, but that's how he meets him is through her. She kind of has some kind of connection. She's also dating this guy. I didn't include him in the rundown because he doesn't last. He doesn't really last.
Yeah, he was the hater, man.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best way we could talk about it. He was the hater. Like he was the guy who was not a fan of.
He's like, I like this girl. She keeps talking to this dude. He's a threat. Just hating the whole time.
So the other character we're introduced to kind of early is Cyril Karn. He's played by Kyle Soller. I don't know if you guys, I'll put out the names of the actors who play them. And he was kind of the guard who discovered what happened, that Cassian Andor killed these two people, but he didn't know at the time that who he was. And his superior was kind of like, no, forget about it. Make up a story. I don't have time for all that.
Now that was one of my favorite scenes. I thought there was a lot of just great dialogue in there. The writers, man, they wrote some cool lines in that one. I was the whole time I'm watching this, I'm like, they're talking about the brothel. They're not in a brothel. It's supposed to be a brothel here, or they're not supposed to be doing this stuff. And I'm just like, well, this is Disney, it's like Disney ain't supposed to be having this kind of stuff, you know what I mean? Star Wars is just, I don't know, I was putting it all together, but that's my brain.
Yeah, but you're right. Like that's something that we're getting in this show that we haven't really gotten.
Right.
So it's cool. It was cool to see. You're right, that exchange between him and his superior. And he was kind of like, "Oh, I have to go to this imperial meeting, so you handle it. Don't worry about it. I can't show." And he kind of made it a thing, like I can't show the Empire that we don't have control, right? Or else we'll kind of lose. I guess they'll lose their contract. Right. So that was kind of like the message he was sending. And this guy is very anxious. Cyril Karn is a very anxious guy, but we find out later a little bit more about it. But we'll talk about it when we get to episode 3 and we talk about what happens there, because that's the episode 3 that we as we get to. The next character I want to talk about is Marva. She's played by Fiona Shaw, famous Australian actress. She's been in other things before. If if you watch movies, you've seen her before. She's been in other things. And she's actually Cassian Andor's adoptive mother on Ferrix. So we find out later on during the story in episode 3 how exactly Andor became to be in her power, or under her control, not her power. In her, I guess, family. Yeah. We find that out a little bit later, but she seemed to be a very early rebel. Like there wasn't a rebellion yet. It was very early in the stages, I guess, after Revenge of the Sith. It's kind of early stages. I would assume that she was kind of like, yeah, I don't like these people. I want to do something about it. And you definitely get that feeling from her. The other character I want to talk about is Linus Mosk. He's played by Alex Ferns, who we all know as Commissioner Savage, right? From the Batman. Yes. So the same guy, and he's playing a cop again in this. So he's kind of typecast. He's the guy who kind of pushes the Cyril character to actually look for Cassian Andor and hunt him down.
Yeah, he's all gung-ho about it, man.
Yes. And he in those outfits, like let's talk about those outfits.
Yeah.
Uniforms. They were kind of funny looking to me. He kind of looked like an Oompa Loompa in it. I'm not gonna lie. Like he kind of had that really round look, and it was blue, and to me that's where my head went, like right away. I'm like, wow, he looks
Oompa Loompa. I didn't think Oompa Loompa, but I just definitely thought, like, man, these uniforms, I mean, they just kind of suck, like you can't appear very threatening in them. I don't know, that's just what I got.
Right. And then I'm like, well, in the actual timeline of things, this would be before the 70s, because so maybe they're trying to work in that kind of go back to that time period and kind of work the costumes around that era.
Maybe.
So maybe, I don't know. I'm putting that out there because they were kind of funny looking.
I think all those guys aspire to move up.
But he's definitely a key character early on in the show, because like I said, the first 3 episodes to me could even be like a mini series for the show, because they're kind of contained. And I feel like at the end of episode 3, we're getting that's like one part of the show. That's the first chapter, those 3 episodes.
Yeah.
Right. And then we're going to move on going from there. So those are kind of the main characters we had to meet in these first 3 episodes. And again, we'll go into a little bit more in depth about who exactly they are and what they do in the story. So we'll just get into it now. We'll discuss episodes 1 through 3. So a couple of things were pretty obvious from the get-go, and we don't exactly have an answer yet as to why. But the first thing was that Cassian Andor is really committed to leave his home of Ferrix.
Mm-hmm.
Did you figure out why yet?
No, other than probably just the lifestyle, man. Like I said, he just seems to kind of get from everything we saw in Rogue One and here, like he's don't have a problem killing somebody. So I guess maybe it's kind of one of those guys. He's got to roam. His time is up. I don't know.
Yeah, it seemed like, I don't know. it could just be a person who just wants to leave, right? That
Yeah.
could just be something as simple as that. He just wanted to get out of there. Like a lot of people just want to leave home
Yeah.
and grow. That could just be the reason why. So yeah, that was the first thing I noticed. I'm like, why is he so dead set on leaving this planet? Like it's his home. He seems to have, have a life there. He has friends there. Like, why is he looking to leave? So that's the first thing I guess we'll kind of find out going forward because of what happens in episode 3. But we'll get to that in a couple minutes. But I mentioned we are introduced to his actual planet he was born on, Canary, through flashback sequences. So we see him as a child, and he doesn't speak English. I don't know what language they call that. I guess it's Canarian or whatever. I have no idea what they call it, but he doesn't speak English as a little boy. And he's part of this kind of like...
Yeah, I was getting some strong like Lord of the Flies vibes.
Right. Yes.
It's like all these kids and they're kind of savage and,
Yeah.
Maybe it's a language they made up.
It could be. It could be. And it seems like it was a separatist planet. So obviously, if you know, everyone watching this, if you're watching, you obviously know the prequels. So we know that the war was between the separatists and, I guess considered the loyalists, to what was then the Republic, which we actually know became the Empire. But so they were fighting on the wrong side and they lost. And that's the first time we see when he says I was fighting since I'm 6 years old. That's kind of the first time we get reference to that. I'm wondering, in the scope of the show, do you think were the flashbacks confusing to you? Because when I'm watching it, they didn't like kind of do a segue. It was just kind of like they went there.
Yeah, it was just kind of like he's talking to somebody, and then it just cuts right to him being a kid at first. At first, you didn't really kind of catch on, or I didn't at first. But I mean, it was confusing, I say at first, but once you saw it one time, you got it figured out. Okay, but wasn't too bad.
Right, and then his sister, he has it must be his sister in the show, because that's who he was looking for, right? So his sister, we get to see her as a kid, but when I first saw Bix, I thought she was the sister. Like I was confused at that point, because I'm like, oh, this is the sister. They're like, no, that's not the sister of her, clearly. So I thought it was a little confusing myself. I was kind of like, well, maybe they could have done that in one block instead of going back and forth. I mean, I was used to that. I watched Arrow for years. If you ever watched the show Arrow, it's on the CW, that's how they told the story of him. They kept using flashbacks, so I'm used to going there. But what they did on that show was they kind of when they would switch to a flashback, they kind of like made a noise and then went to like a black and white screen at first, and then they went back to the color as the scene went on.
Right.
But we get none of that in this.
No.
It's just, oh look, we're in this. They're kids. They're like, who the hell are these? And then his name then was Casa, right? They didn't call him Cashin. It was just Casa.
Yeah.
So it was a little confusing to me. I guess it's necessary for the show going forward. It didn't make, like, seeing those scenes didn't clear anything up for me, at least not yet.
Right.
So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how you felt, but it didn't do any of that for me.
Yeah. I mean, kind of gave you an idea of what he came from, but other than that,
right, like there's nothing
until later on,
Right, we learn how he gets off that planet.
Yeah. Right.
We'll talk about that in a little while, but the next thing we kind of touched on this a little bit. When we're introduced to the Bix character, you could tell he's someone he's close to. He goes and asks her for help with something, and then she like kind of immediately. Well, first he meets the other guy. I should have put his name down. I forgot. The guy, her boyfriend. That's what
the hater. The hater.
Yeah, the hater. Yes. First he meets the hater, and then he kind of tells him like, "Yeah, we're kind of a thing." So then he kind of questions her on that. He kind of questions her on if they're a thing, and she was like, "Well, you're not around." She says something like that, like, "Well, you're not here. Or you're never around." So you kind of get the idea that they might have had something in the past, but now they're friends. So we'll see how that advances, I guess, going forward, because these things, they tend to come back
for sure.
When they plant these seeds early. But I definitely. What do you think? Do you think they were lovers.
Yeah, definitely. You know, they got the tension in between them, and you know, she obviously cares about the dude. You know,
Yes.
she's helping him out. She's going to help him out and do what she can. But you also get that tension in the hater dude. You know, she's always in a bad mood when after she talks to you. You know, gives in that kind of line. You know, it's like, man, shut up, man.
Yes. Yeah. So it's gonna that little relationship is gonna be fun to watch. I think moving forward in the show. And to see what happens with her too, because she's obviously like Star Wars has a history of strong women, and she's another one. You could tell right away she's a very strong female character. So,
Oh yeah,
you know, we're gonna see she helps him, and I kind of touched on this earlier, but she's actually the one who introduces him to the next character. I'll just talk about real quick, Luthen Rail, who's played by Stellan Skarsgård, who's just fantastic. I love him in everything I ever see him in, so he's great. She creates their meeting. She sets up their meeting by how she knows him, and it's cool how she goes to like this tower. I don't know where it is, some kind of thing, and it's like this old school Morse code she's kind of using to get the message to him and stuff. Like all the spy stuff that you know we have in like our like spy system, like he incorporates into this episode and this show. So that's been fun. Like that part was fun to see.
right.
So Luthen Rail, we'll fast forward. We don't really meet. We kind of meet him towards the end of episode 2, and then we learn a little bit more about him in episode 3 going forward. And he is connected to the rebellion. He's technically, I guess, a recruiter as well for the rebellion, but he also seems to have a connection to Mon Mothma. We haven't seen that yet. From stuff we've seen in trailers and stuff, who we know Mon Mothma's in the show. Obviously, she's one of the leaders of the rebellion, so we're gonna see her. But one thing he says in episode 3, and this clip we're about to talk about was the one that they released like a couple weeks ago. If you were looking for clips of the show, this was the one that they released, and this was also one of the ones that I went and saw Rogue One in IMAX again, and they showed this as part of the 25-minute lead-in to Rogue One. They showed clips from Andor, and they showed this scene. So, and Cassian Andor has this Imperial. I don't really know.
I didn't quite know what it was.
Right, but apparently it's cool and important, and it can help. It can help the rebellion.
Yeah,
he has this, and he needs money, obviously, to get off. Again, he wants to just get out of this planet, so he needs the money. And Bix sets up the meeting with Luthen Rail, and they finally meet, and he's talking to him, and he actually drops a hint that he knows who Cassian Andor's real father is.
right.
Now, that to me is of all the 3 episodes, that was the one I'm like, okay, who? Now I like want to know, like, who the hell is his father? Like,
Yeah.
is it somebody we know? Is it somebody that that we've heard about in the Star Wars lore and Star Wars history? So I'm just gonna stop there for a minute. Would you want that, or do you want him to be just some random guy?
No, man. Maybe. I really don't know, because like, get back to the whole Rey thing. You know, you want to know who her parents were, then they kind of, it doesn't matter, and then you find out,
And then they make it matter, yes.
Yeah, and then so it's kind of cool that he's a character right now we don't know much about, but where they're doing like 24 episodes, so yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. That's the kind of the thing I'm looking at right now. I'm like, all right, they're setting this up for a reason. There's a reason they're putting this out there that
for sure
is. And his character, Luthen Rail's character, obviously is going to be very, very key in the show because, like I said, he does recruit. He's a rebel, and that's his real reason for coming. We find out that that's
we don't even care about the
That scene, by the way, is fantastic. I don't know. It looks like they shot. It looks like it's all real. Doesn't look like any green screen used, and it looks very dangerous.
Yeah,
right. Like, but it was fantastic. Like it
was good. It was good. There's a lot of really good action in this show so far, just in the 3 episodes that we've had so far. And, it's not, there's no Jedi, there's none of the fantastical, kind of elements in there. I mean, I think we only see maybe one droid pretty much throughout the whole show so far, Really hadn't even seen any kind of aliens, Of course, they call everybody's a human,
Yeah.
So it's been real. I like it, It's real grounded, like I said. So the action's been good. Can only get better, I hope.
Yeah, that the droid, he has a long name that he keeps calling him BE, so that's just an easy one. But I actually looked up his name and it was like a bunch of numbers and stuff. Like, how Star Wars droids have all the crazy numbers. So, but yeah, and it was a different kind of droid, right? He kind of looks like this little footstool that his head pokes out. And he's technically Marva's droid, right? He's technically Andor's mother's droid. And she obviously has health problems, you can tell, and he kind of helps her out and does things,
Right.
but he also kind of covers for Cashin in the show. Like, he covers for him when he doesn't want people to tell on him what he's doing. That's another thing. But the droids are always a fun part of Star Wars, I feel. It's like one of the cutesy, nice little things that they throw in there. And obviously we've had great ones in the show, in the movies, and so this looks like it's going to be another one. He seems like a very cool droid, and who knows? We might get more. I have no idea. But so let's really quickly talk about like the technical aspects of the show. What did you think of, like, I brought up, this looks like it was practical effects. Looks like they didn't use CGI. There are some scenes obviously you could tell were CGI. But what did you think how they blended them together? Do you think it was rough, or could you have a hard time telling?
No, I think it looked real good. I mean, it looks like Rogue One, the movie. When you watch it, I mean, it's that same kind of theatricality to it. So it looks real good. I would have to sit there and just really look at it to kind of point out what's CGI and what's not. I mean, it looks like they built a lot of these sets and a lot of the everything. It's great.
Yeah, I agree. That was one of the good things about it. Watching it, I was kind of like, I know they're using CGI in some of these, but the transitions and everything were so well done that it's really hard to tell. And that, to me, is the sign of a great show. Like, there were some issues with CGI, obviously, on people had issues with some of the stuff on Obi-Wan. And we know because of COVID, that's been an issue. CGI has been an issue with a lot of other things, which is why a lot of films have been pushed back just to kind of fix the CGI and make it look good. But they used a lot of practical effects. And like I said, that scene we're talking about where he meets Luthen Rail in that warehouse, and God, there's all chains and a bunch of engine parts.
Yeah, it looked like engines flying around and
and you can tell that was all real. Like, that, none of that was CGI'd at all. And it was fantastic. You mentioned the writers before. Did you really, really like the writing? Did you like the dialogue? What?
Yeah, I mean, it felt, I guess one of the kind of complaints about Star Wars throughout time has kind of been the dialogue. There's always kind of been that kind of cheesy, whatever. But in this, I think they're really telling a good story so far. And it's like you feel like these characters are real people. You know what I mean? It's not like I hate sand, whatever.
It's definitely not a George Lucas written script,
right?
So we're happy about that. I love George Lucas, but he's
script
writing is not his thing. So I'm happy we don't have that. Yeah, Tony Gilroy, who wrote Rogue One, is the creator and showrunner and writer of this.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Rogue One. I mean, that you take that out of the Star Wars universe and put it in any other universe, and it would work. As like kind of war movie type thing. It was just really good in that aspect.
Yeah, the writing, I was very, very surprised at how good it was. I thought the dialogue, a lot of the conversations they were having were totally different than what I'm
Mhm.
used to in a Star Wars film.
Right.
Or a Star Wars show even. I mean, as great as The Mandalorian is, I can't recall any great dialogue in the show.
Yeah.
But this, like the conversation that Luthen and Cassian have is great. The first conversation he has with Bix is great. And the acting is really, really good.
Oh
Like,
yeah. Yeah.
that's another thing. Diego Luna is excellent. I've seen him in other things. So I know he's very good, but as I said, Stellan Skarsgård's great. Adria Arjona is great. She was actually, I mean, people don't like this movie, but she actually was the doctor in Morbius, his kind of love interest in Morbius. So if you haven't seen it, and
I didn't hate it. Didn't hate it.
I didn't hate it either. I didn't hate it either. That's another story. That's another discussion. We can have another time, because that I didn't hate it either. I thought it got a lot of undue hate, but yeah. So she's fantastic. Even the people who only show up for a few seconds are really good in this. Like the I guess the hooker. I don't know what else to call her, but
Yeah, I hate to say that, but yeah.
what else? What else? Okay. Oh, sex worker? Like what are we gonna do here? How do we clean this up?
Is it Bordello? That was a mutant Bordello of Blood, right? That was, remember that Tales from the Crypt movie? I think that's like an actual, I don't know, maybe. I'm not too learned on that
Industry. Nor am I. Despite what people may have heard, I'm not
There
that
you go.
on that industry. But no, but even like she was great in her
The madam.
the madam, yes.
Madam, there you go. We'll say
She was
madam.
great. She was great too. Like and her part was actually tougher because she's one of the first scenes in the show.
Sure, yeah.
So, like, you want to draw people in, you have to nail the first 10 minutes of a show. If you're going to get people to stick around, you have to do that. I say that every show I watch. If the first 10 minutes suck, you're going to have so many people turn off and go the other way. And that didn't happen here. The first 10 minutes are fantastic. And like I said, it comes out hitting hard, and then it tails off. So like you get that quick jolt and that quick punch of like, oh crap, this is serious. This is a serious dude. And then bam, it just kind of levels out from there. So like even the structure of the scenes, how the pacing is so non-Star Wars, like,
right.
Like Star Wars is always quick and then slide scene and then quick, and then this is not that. It's just a slow kind of deliberate pace, and then it picks up and then it goes back to a slow kind of deliberate pace, which again is so not what we're used to here. But man,
I mean, they're really, if they're doing 24 episodes, they're really wanting to tell a story, so
yeah. I mean, I don't want to bring up Obi-Wan, but that's why I was pissed about Obi-Wan, because if they're doing that for this show, why wouldn't they do something like that for that show?
Budget reasons, maybe.
Well, that's the only reason I could think of is budget reasons, and I'm sure the salaries for McGregor and even Christian, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure they might have been a little bit more than what these actors are getting, just because.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So that could have been a reason why. I don't know. But it just bothers me now because I know that show I liked Obi-Wan, don't get me wrong. And if you watched the previous show, you know that. But I felt like it could have been 2 or 3 episodes longer than we actually got. So just to flesh it out and have things a little bit better. But we're not going to have a problem with this show because, like we said, 24 episodes.
Could be too much.
It could be. There could be there could be some throwaway episodes, which every show has.
Right.
But there could be a couple more of those here in this one. So the writing, pacing, the direction seemed really solid. I felt like I felt like everyone gave really good performances. The guy who directed it isn't Tony Gilroy, even though he's a director, but he didn't direct these first couple episodes. So again, X did a really, really good job there. Just a really, really solid first 3 episodes. I felt like we had a very good introduction to what the world of what Andor is going to bring us in a Star Wars world that we're so familiar with already. All right, so we know what we know. Okay, let's kind of quickly run down what happens in the end of episode 3, because we kind of went through everything how we got there,
Yeah.
and then we talked about the scene where he finally meets Luthen Rail, and we talked about the fight that happened. So they're kind of on the run, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Luthen is basically convinces Cassian to go with him,
Mm-hmm.
right? So,
and he really doesn't have much of a choice at that point either.
Right, like he's definitely on the run, and like how they get out of it is so awesome. Very smart, very cunning. You could see a lot of the stuff we saw in Rogue One here from his character. A very smart guy, very savvy. So we see that. Yeah,
kind of let you know, he's been on the run a lot, so
exactly. Like we're getting more and more of the story without getting the story. And what we got in the flashbacks at the end of episode 3 was when Marva found him on Kenari. He was in a ship and he was kind of destroying the ship.
Yeah.
And she finds him and her husband, whose name he actually takes, as Andor is her husband's last name. It's kind of like, no, you're crazy, leave him alone. And she's like, I'm not leaving him here. They're gonna come kill him.
Yeah.
Because the Empire was looking for them as well. And
because they killed the dude.
Yeah, they killed one of the soldiers.
Right. So at this point, if you just see that, then it's like he escaped, they took him, but the rest of the Lord of the Flies tribe maybe perished, which his sister would have been part of, right?
Well, we don't see what happens to them. They kind of go ahead.
But that's what you get out,
Yeah.
What they're thinking, they're all gonna die.
Yeah, they kind of get scared and then run away after they kill they kill the soldier, and he just kind of goes into the ship, and he starts. I guess still trying to figure. I guess he does that because they're trying to kill him.
Yeah, so I was like, because he's like looking around and he kind of sees his reflection, and then he starts tearing stuff up. So had he never seen his reflection before? Are they that savage? I mean, are they like Encino Man? What's going on?
Yeah, no, clearly they are. Right. They fight with blow darts and
for sure,
things like that. So clearly they're a very primitive group. But she kind of rescues him and brings him to Ferrix, and that's how he gets there, and that's how we find out how Marva adopted him. Basically, obviously teaches him English because she speaks English, so that's how he learns. So so that's how we learn about him. At the same time, he's escaping now from Ferrix with Luthen Rail to get off planet, and they have that kind of dual scene of him as a boy looking at him leaving Kenari, and then you have him as an adult with Luthen Rail leaving Ferrix as they both go on to their new adventures in life, which is why I said it's kind of a prologue. I felt like these first 3 episodes are kind of a prologue to what's going to happen going forward. All right, so since we know that now he's obviously going to join the rebellion, or the early stages of the rebellion, what would you like to see from the character? Now we know what happens in Rogue One, so you always got to keep that, I guess, in the back of your mind. But what would you like to see about his character moving forward?
Well, I mean, we know that the hater, Bix's boyfriend at the time, is dead now.
Yes,
because he sold out. He sold him out. He sold Cassius out.
Yes,
and told him, hey, this is the guy, because that was the whole thing after he killed the 2 guys. This what's his name? Cyril Korn, not Korn. Anyway, he wants to come after him, find out who did it, and it was the madam, right, who kind of let him know that it's the guy from.
When they got a rendering of him because they found out who he was.
Yeah, because
they got a rendering of him with this hologram, and she confirms. Yes.
Yeah, he told her that they were from Kenari.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so everybody's like, Kenari, what? But and then the Bix's boyfriend sold him out because he got drunk and got mad.
Well, yeah, because she kept going.
She wouldn't tell him nothing. She was just like, shows you who wore the pants in that relationship. But you know,
Yeah, she was like, I'm going running errands. I'm going to
yeah,
run errands.
I'm
She said
running
that
errands.
twice.
Yeah,
Twice in the episode. In the first 2 episodes, she says it.
yeah.
Yeah, so you're right. That happens, and then we find out. So now she's obviously. Well, the last time we see her, she was kind of being held captive.
Yeah.
Because her boyfriend guy, I should have wrote down his name. I forgot,
Yeah,
but
I can't
he got killed trying to save her from them.
Mhm.
So he gets killed, and then she sees it. And then when they find out that where Cashin and Luthen are, they kind of abandon her and they just leave her. So
Yeah.
she's kind of left to her own devices now. We don't know what's going to happen, but I'm assuming we're going to see her again.
Yeah, I would think so. I think at some point, they're in this together. The relationship kind of blossoms back up, but he's got to be on the go. He's a midnight cowboy or whatever.
I'm
it's
hoping
not going to end well for her. I don't think.
Yeah, we don't see her in Rogue One, so I don't know what happens to her going forward. But I'm kind of hoping we see his development at becoming the spy that he became, he was in Rogue One. I'm kind of hoping we see how he gets there, that development of the character. Because he's still very raw, right? Like he's very raw right now.
Right. I remember like one of the things in Rogue One where he says, we've all done things, I think it was even in the trailer for the rebellion. So he's gonna do, I hope they don't really hold back. I hope he does some crazy stuff, that's, kind of shows because up to this point, we know about the rebellion, but what happened during that time to really get the rebellion going? And you got to think, man, the Empire is in charge, so these are just criminals at this point, like lawless,
Mm-hmm.
So they got to really do some bad stuff, to get on the Empire's radar at first.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So it's gonna be pretty. I hope it's violent. Really.
Well, he tells Luthen that it was when he got that piece from the Empire that it was very easy to steal. He's like, I just kind of walked in unassuming, and they didn't even question him. Right. So he kind of lets them know that. Yeah. So he kind of lets them know that, and because he was going to pay him extra to tell him how he got it, and he was like, at
that point, it's like, who's going to challenge us?
Right. So right, and that's obviously setting up how they get the plans and everything, which actually we see in Rogue One is kind of setting that up as well.
Right.
I think for the future, just how lax they might have been and how drunk off power that they probably were at that point, because no one could oppose them.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that I definitely want to see. We know, like I said, we know Mon Mothma's in it more, and so I want to see a little bit more of how she became the head of, the head of the rebellion. Do we see down the line, is Bail Organa going to be in this? Do we get a touch of Princess Leia somehow in the future? Like, I don't know again, but this is all around that time period. So
yeah, I mean, I hope, I'm a Vader guy. I hope we get some kind of Vader in it. There's got to be some mention of Vader at some point.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
So even if it's just like one episode, let me get, I mean, Rogue One had probably the best Vader scene ever. So
amazing.
Get a little homage to that, it'd be great.
It would be cool to see, like, maybe not. They might not put him in the show, but like, we can't do that because he's out there.
Yeah, just
like stuff like his presence kind of just hovering over moves they want to make.
Right.
Because I read, there's a book, The Rise of Darth Vader. There was a book I read it years ago. Yeah. Did you read that book?
I did read that book. Yes.
Yeah. Right. So they kind of talk about, like, it's not obviously it's not going to be in this story, but they kind of hint on how he was when he was younger before we get to meet him in A New Hope.
Yeah.
So, and we got a little bit of that in Obi-Wan with him appearing in that. So we got a little bit of how he was obviously as a younger Sith.
Right.
So that book kind of fleshed some stuff out for me, but it would be cool if they could implement some kind of his presence in this show, because he's there, right? We all know that he's there. We know the Emperor's there. You know,
Yeah,
we
I
know.
mean, yeah, I think there could be a possibility for a mention of Han Solo. You know,
Yep. We know
I
he's
mean,
around. We know again, Obi-Wan obviously we still knows around. We just saw him. You know, we have all of these characters that are still there. And I know people are like, well, I kind of want to move away from that with this show, but it's kind of hard to do a show about that time period and
yeah,
not talk about them.
yeah, they're not so much in the limelight, but just I mean, Solo smuggling stuff, so
Right.
whatever. But and then we're gonna get some Saw Gerrera, so he's a cool character. I liked him. So
Yeah.
and he's hardcore too, man. So maybe he takes Cassian under his wing and kind of shows him how to be a little more brutal.
Well, that's the other thing too, because he's technically taking care of Jin right now, right? So,
Yeah.
like it will her character as a little kid appear in the show. Maybe not with Andor, but in some kind of a scene with Saw, will she
Yeah.
show up?
Well, this is supposed to take cover 5 years. I
Yes.
think is what I've read. 5
Yes, the
years.
5 year. Well, they say they in the beginning they put 5 years BBY, right? Before Battle of
Yeah.
Yavin, I think,
Yeah.
at the beginning of the show. So they kind of give you that time period.
Yeah. So you're gonna get some time jumps
Yeah,
for sure.
we are.
So,
So yeah, so I'm like I said, it was a slow build, but by this episode 3, now you're kind of like, all right, I want to see the next one, right? Like you're at that point now, like, oh crap, they built it up now. I can't wait to see what comes next. And
yeah.
that's where I'm at too, man. I am just looking forward to next week. This again, this was the show like all year. Like I wanted to see Obi-Wan, but I kind of had an idea where they were going to go. But this was the show I wanted to see because I knew how long it was, and I knew it was going to be different than what we got, even from The Mandalorian. Like I knew it was going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really looking forward to where they go with it now, and how they lead into Rogue One, because apparently that's what it's going to do. It's going to lead it right into the events of Rogue One. So,
yeah. Well, no, it's good. Like I said, I'm glad they put those 3 episodes together. But now it'll be easier now to okay, now everything's going. Now you can watch that next episode and then have that build up for the following episode. But like I said, I watched the first episode and I was like, okay, second episode, and I got a little distracted in the second episode and almost didn't watch the third episode. I was going to wait, but I was like, okay. And I'm glad I watched the third episode because that really brought it all together and just, bring it home. I mean, those 3 episodes together, like you said, it worked out good.
yeah, it really did. Like it was smart. Like you said, if they would have just showed the first one, I don't know how many people would have been like, wow, that was boring.
After that first scene, man, after just kind of it slows down. He's like, I need to get some money and get the hell out of here. But I guess maybe that's why he knows they're going to be coming after him at some point. I guess I don't know. Maybe he's just burned enough bridges. He's got to get out of there because at that point, a lot of people didn't want to help him out anymore.
Right, you could definitely tell he's a hot mess, right? Like,
yeah.
Like people are trying to distance themselves from him.
One dude's like, "Hey, man, I gave you some money. I need my money back." And
that's another character. It's kind of like his. I don't know if it's his best friend, but a guy who's close to him. Who's
that guy. I never caught his name, but he's going to be pretty close.
So I wonder how he ties into the future. Like, are we going to see? Because obviously now he's not on that planet anymore. So are we going to see these people again? That's kind of one of the questions I have going forward. Or is it just going to focus on that? So it's going to be an interesting show to see how it unfolds. But again, guys, it really is a good, like I said, kind of a good prologue to I think what we're going to get after this. It's very smart that they did the first 3, and they probably knew that. They probably watching it knew that themselves. That hey, we need to kind of give people enough so that they come back because it's a character we know so little about. You you can't bank on, like, you could bank on people watching Obi-Wan Kenobi. Everyone knows him for years and years and years.
Yeah, Obi-Wan Kenobi could have, which I loved it, but it could have sucked. But everybody's going to watch all the episodes, so they can complain about it later. So,
Right.
This one could have been hit or miss. Like, it's kind of boring. I'm not going to watch it anymore, or wait till I hear something good about it. But going into it, like, all the reviews seem to be pretty good. I didn't read a whole lot from what was being put out, other than it was positive. It was more adult driven. There's just so much, and it shows you that there's just so much they can do with Star Wars, the universe, that really hadn't been touched on yet. Which, so I hope it just keeps going and going and going and going. I mean, you can never get enough as far as I'm concerned.
Right. I mean, we have so much good content coming as well in animation. They have that Tales of the Jedi show that's coming out. They started casting the Acolyte, so we're going to be seeing that show is going to be coming out. Obviously, Ahsoka. We're getting Ahsoka.
Yeah, and I mean, there's the whole the old legend books that used to come. Or I forget the name of them, but there's just so much Old Republic stuff that's never been touched on. Like it'd be great to see. I'm still holding out for a Darth Bane series or a movie or something, man. That was probably one of my favorite trilogy of Star Wars books.
Darth Bane, Darth Revan.
Yeah, there's so many, man.
Yeah, there's a lot of good material from those years. I would love it. Like, I'd love them to explore that time period a little bit more. But that's like centuries before now, so it would still be cool, though. Yeah, it would be cool.
I mean, there's just so much that you can do. I mean, so Star Wars ain't going anywhere.
No, sorry, Pete. We know you're not a Star Wars fan.
I mean, they don't necessarily have to keep going back to the Skywalker or anything like that, but I mean, like I said, there's just so much history, talking about like it's real life, but it kind of is to us.
Dude, you're 43. I'm 45. I literally, the movie A New Hope came out for me 6 months after I was born, so it's been a part of my life.
Yeah, our whole lives, man.
Yep.
So it's
pretty
awesome.
Oh, there's Peter. See, Pete comes in at the end. About the show.
Pete,
there he is.
Dude, I'll talk some old school Trek with you.
Not me. I don't know. It's not that I dislike Star Trek. I like it. It's fine.
I like the original. I like the next generation, and that's about as far as I go with it.
You need to get Chris Clow. Get on Chris Clow. A show with Chris Clow. He'll talk about Star Trek for years. I love Star Trek. It's good stuff.
It's good stuff. It's a different sci-fi. It's more sci-fi. I guess why they call Star Wars more space opera.
Yes,
whatever that means.
Yeah. Well, Star Wars, not in this show, but in the movies, there's always a song.
Yeah.
Playing underneath, right? Like there's always music kind of attached to
Sure.
it. So that's kind of why they call it that. So yeah, but I don't know. I've always liked it better. It's just something. I used to watch Star Trek, the old ones, with my mother when I was a kid.
Yeah.
She would watch.
Well, Star Wars has more action, more, it's got every, I actually heard a professor here at the college years ago, and he was like, Star Wars is the great epic of America. Every country had its great epic, coming up, and Star Wars is it for America, the United States. So maybe.
Man, I don't know. Again, like I said when we started the show, if you would have told me when I was a kid I'd still be talking about new material at this age, I would have been like, you're crazy. But of course, look, Pete's at, of course.
Spaceballs.
Don't you remember the day like a month ago? They people were saying quote something from Spaceballs, and I put a quote, and then like everyone was answering me. It's the one time like everyone was answering me, quoting other lines from Spaceballs.
Dude, I didn't answer that because every time I thought of someone would come up with one, I was like, I'd have to go back and watch it to find something.
It's so great. I love that movie. I love that movie.
As big as mine.
Oh, Mel Brooks, man.
And I am your father's brothers, nephews, cousins, ex.
That movie, and then Robin Hood Men in Tights he did, and obviously Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and Blazing Saddles. Yeah, man, he's just Notebooks is just fantastic. He's still going too, still kicking. He's still here.
Is he? He's still alive?
I believe so. I believe he's still here. I'll check on that now. I don't want to like resurrect somebody, but
Yeah, I don't know.
yeah, he's still here.
Really? But has he done anything late? He hasn't done anything in years, has he?
He's 96 years old. Still going, man. Good for him. Yeah. I remember they kept a couple of years ago they were talking about doing Spaceballs too. And it just fell. They didn't.
Oh, that'd be great.
But yeah, I would love to, with the original cast, having the ball coming back. Obviously, John Candy can't.
Right. Well, Rick Moranis retired too.
Yeah, but he came back recently to do something, or he's doing something. I forget what it is, but yeah, but I'm sure he would come back. Bill Pullman, Daphne Zuniga, all of them. I'm sure. Obviously, Joan Rivers can't either, but she just played a voice, so maybe her daughter could do it. I don't know.
Maybe.
But yeah, so yes, Pete got us talking Spaceball. We'll see. I'll talk Spaceball. I'll talk Spaceball. That's fine. I have no problem with that. So all right. So Steve, thank you for coming on, man. This was great. I'm glad I finally got you on the show. Again, like I said, I'm going to have a revolving door of hosts on this one. So, I might, there are some shows people are like, oh, can I be on with this person? So maybe more than one. So if you want to come back, I'll let you know.
Man, just let me know as long as I'm not down in it, I'm good to go.
Yeah. And, maybe at the end, when the first season ends, because I don't know if they're showing them back to back. I don't know how they're doing it. But when the first 12 episodes ends, we could do like a recap show, and I could bring everybody on who was on with me.
Have a big round table.
Nice. All these windows would be filled off the screen. It would be fun to do something like that. So if you want to tell people how they can get in touch with you, you can.
Man, I don't really have a whole lot. You can find me hovering on the BOF
group,
Facebook group, and the SOG, and
yes,
I'm on Twitter. It's SHelm66, like Shelm 66, Batman 66, whatever. That's me.
All right, guys. If you listen straight out of Gotham, you know where to find me, but you see my information right on the screen at finally33 for me, at straight__G for the show. Both Pete and I monitor the Twitter handle. So if you want to reach us there, you can do that. As Steve just mentioned, if you're on the Facebook group, you can always interact with us there. I love having interaction in that group. I'd like to have more of it. So that's why I'm trying to throw silly things out there every once in a while, like the Halloween costume, the Halloween.
I got
nothing. Come on. Oh.
I thought you were talking about like Halloween movies, man, at first. And you're like, Halloween memories. I'm like,
well,
no memories.
Maybe you have a memory around the movie. That'd be fine.
I'll get back to it.
All right, it's there. So if you guys, if you check out the group, obviously, guys, it's like, I don't know. I want to grow it. I want to do more with it. So the more interaction we get there, the better for the show. And of course, again, Pete and I both monitor that. So if you're looking for either one of us, check us out over there. So I think that's it for this episode. So guys, again, every week, every Thursday, I'm not going to do it Wednesday because I have another show I'm doing on Wednesdays. So every Thursday, we will be discussing the recent episode of Andor for that week. Again, interact with me on Twitter. Let me get your thoughts and feelings about the show. I love talking about this stuff, obviously, or else I wouldn't be sitting here right now talking to you guys. So hopefully we'll see you guys next week. For Steve, I'm Eric. You are watching SOG Tonight, and I'll see you next week.